Hello and welcome here again live to the World Crypto Network, to the show Open Source Everything, where we talk about amazing open source projects and how they are actively bringing us towards liberty, how they are actively changing the world, hopefully to a better place. And today I'm really excited to talk about one of the most, exciting projects, open source projects in Bitcoin, and that is the Bisq Decentralized and Peer-to-Peer Exchange. And I'm here with the co-founder, Manfred. How are you?
Hello, hi. Yeah, thanks for the invitation to your great show. And yeah, I'm fine. I'm looking forward for having a great discussion with you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The beautiful thing about open source projects like Bisq, and you can check it out on the Bisq.network webpage, is that, for example, if you go here to the YouTube, to the video page, you can see all the videos, all the team meetings, and the so-called Bisq growth calls, which I highly encourage you to check out. Because, well, this is transparent, this is communicative, and this is exactly what we will continue today, is simply spreading awareness and spreading the knowledge of this amazing piece of software, the Bisq client. And maybe just to start this off with, this is fundamentally not just a website, right? You actually have to, well, either download the installer or go to GitHub and compile this piece of software from source. So this is not a web page like, for example, another peer-to-peer exchange, hodlhodl.com. So where, Manfred, it's a fundamental difference between having a peer-to-peer exchange on a website and having a true decentralized exchange in a separate client.
Yeah, to have a web page-based exchange has, of course, a lot of convenience for the user because they don't need to install anything extra, but you never get this level of decentralization what you get with downloadable software which you install on your computer, and then you're participating as a full node in a peer-to-peer network. Full node, I don't refer on a Bitcoin full node, but in the Bitcoin network, which are as a Bisq network. So the Bisq network forms a peer-to-peer network, and every Bisq application is a node in this network. And there are no servers, so there are a high level of censorship resistance. That, yeah, like we have seen with Shapeshift, when it's an exchange which is run by a company and has a web page, it's very easy to get under pressure and to get shut down or get forced into regulatory requirements, which are often not even don't apply to the country where the company is located. Like with Shapeshift, the American regulatory forced them to change their policy to not have a countless exchange model anymore. And I think as soon as those exchanges become bigger and more relevant, they will experience the same pressure and will experience the same fate. To really be censorship resistant require decentralization. Decentralization itself is not the purpose on its own. It has a lot of costs. It's more complicated. It has some disadvantages like speed and convenience, what you lose, but you winning censorship resistant. And that's actually the same reason why Bitcoin is interesting and important, is because of the censorship resistant property, and that requires fully decentralization. And when this is not a value for you, or when you're not aware, probably first you need to think a little bit more about it and discuss more about it. And when you're then still not convinced or aware of it, then probably there's no reason why you should use Bitcoin in the first place. Then stay with PayPal or whatever. And probably there's also not the reason why you to use Bisq then probably Coinbase or whatever is easier to use. But then, yeah, you're not using the system like it is intended to be used, or like it is built based on the values on what it is built.
Well, and for these users, they can have Ripple. They don't really need Bitcoin, right? Because that is exactly what you said. What Bitcoin fundamental core principle is: censorship resistance. This is the goal: having a true censorship-resistant peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And that means that it is being sent truly from one individual sovereign to another individual sovereign. Without any representative. There is no one representing these full nodes on the network, I thank you very much, but I do present myself with this Bitcoin full node. By the way, there's also the Bisq client on there as well. So,
Cool.
this is the true goal of Bitcoin, is not decentralization. That is a means to an end. And it is really expensive. So with Bitcoin, these expenses are especially long block propagation times and long block intervals, and of course high fees for block inclusion, high transaction fees, and so would you maybe go a bit more into the different costs that Bisq has to carry in order to be properly censorship resistant?
Yeah, one thing is that user need to download their application and cannot just go to a web page and run it there. I mean, yeah, this has some costs, but of course has a lot of benefits. One benefit is that you cannot become victim of phishing because you don't enter a web page with your account or whatever. You have all your data locally in your local software, which you can protect by a password which you choose, and basically there's no risk for phishing. Another cost or main issue is at the moment that when you are the offer maker who is creating an offer which is then published to the peer-to-peer network, you need your application need to stay online. You cannot shut it down, or when your laptop goes in sleep mode, their offer will disappear because you are basically playing the role of a server for your offer. When another user want to take your offer, you have to be online because you are signing the multisig transaction with the other peer. Nobody can do this instead of you. That only applies to the offer maker. When you want to just take an offer from the offer book of one of the available offers, you don't need to stay online. You can take the offer, then can go offline, check maybe in a few hours again if the deposit transaction has been confirmed already, and if you're the buyer, you have to send then the fiat transfer to the other peer or the altcoin when you're doing an altcoin trade. And when you're the seller, you have to check when you when the buyer has done the payment, that you can verify if you have received the payment and then close the trade. So you only have to go online again for checking it there as well. I mean, web page based services usually use emails, so you get notified by an email that introduce, of course, the phishing and other security risks. In a peer-to-peer system, we don't have an email server. We don't have servers, so it's not there's no room for something like this. But we just published with the latest release, we published a notification service with a mobile application, so you can download for iOS or Android a mobile application, which you can set up that you get notified about the trade state. For instance, when you're in the middle of a trade and the other peer has started the payment to you, you get a message that that the trade state has changed, and then you can go online again with your Bisq application and do the required actions there. So of course it has some downsides, but it has a lot of positive sides beside all the privacy and security aspects, which is a big topic. But just from convenience, it has also quite a lot of advantages. When you want to open an account at Coinbase or any centralized exchange, it can take weeks or even months, like it was in December when the Bitcoin price was spiking and they get flooded with new registrations. They couldn't handle it, and many people didn't have the chance to get into Bitcoin at the time when they really wanted it, and because their slots were filled with from registrations, and it took 2 months or so to get your account verified. Then you have to expose a lot of your private data. They require your password and so on. Or sometimes you get rejected for a very unclear reason because you don't have the type of residency proof what they required, because maybe you are living in an area where you're off the grid and you don't have any electricity costs because you're living on solar energy, and they require electricity bill and some stupid things like this, and then you cannot open an account. So and that takes, usually in the best case it takes days, in the worst case it takes weeks. So, and with Bisq, that doesn't exist. You're downloading the application, and after 1 minute or so, when your application is synced with the network, you can set up your account, and then you can start trading. And if you like, we can make a small demo. I have prepared some local development environment where we can do a trade between a buyer and a seller, set up an account, and I can show how the trade works. And you will see it's actually not really complicated. It's a little bit a different model like an exchange, because you are not, yeah, there's no automatic order matching or whatever. It's a different model. It's more like local Bitcoin for the people who are familiar with local Bitcoins. It's more a market at the end where you are trading with another peer. You are not trading with Bisq itself. Bisq is not, yeah, it's not an exchange. It's just a software which enables you to exchange with other Bisq users.
I especially like that you said that the order maker has to be online, because, well, guess what? It is a individual, a sovereign node, and a individual, is not representable. You have to be there, at least your computer does, in order to sign the transaction for finishing this order. And yes, this might be inconvenient, but honestly, Raspberry Pi be on 24/7. If you run a Bitcoin full node, you are on 24/7. So being online as a market maker is not too difficult. And the cool thing is that precisely because when you are all online all the time, then you control the keys and you control the signature and you control your trade, your economic trade with your sovereign money. So this is something that is truly fascinating, and absolutely, Manfred, it's great that you've set up this test environment. So let's go through it step by step. Once the users have downloaded from the official website, right here, bisq.network, you can, as I said, either compile it from source if you want to go full cypherpunk, right? Don't trust verify. But then you could also just go to download and check which software you're running. I'm, of course, running Ubuntu. Hopefully soon, Pure OS, that would be nice. But so once you've downloaded it and installed it, how, Manfred, does the setup and the trade work?
Yeah, maybe I make a screen sharing and I will step you through everything. I share the entire screen, so it might be a little bit big information. I just explain quickly the current development setup, so that's not confusing, because it's a little bit different, of course, like when you do a real trade. So I have here a Bisq application which represents the Bitcoin buyer. Let's call her Alice. Then on the right side, I have another Bisq application which represents the Bitcoin seller. Let's call him Bob. And in this local test environment, I have, also that's reg test, that's not mainnet. So these coins, what you see here is not real money, just development environment. And the good thing here is that we can create, like a miner, we can create new blocks just with the command line, like generate here. And we are creating new blocks, and we don't have to wait for the blockchain confirmation in the trade, which would be not very convenient for the live demo when we have to wait then for minimum 10 minutes or even longer. So that's the reason. And of course, usually you only have one application, and you can be in the role of the buyer or the seller or the taker or maker role. And you usually don't see the other peer, which is another anonymous trader in the Bisq network. But for demonstration purposes, I will show you both sides so you can see how it looks from both perspectives. Of course, you have to take care to not get confused when I switch too quickly, and feel free, Max, to interrupt me when I'm getting too fast. Yeah, as the first thing, when you open Bisq, yeah, you are here in the market on the offer book, and you can see the open offers and yeah, for different currencies. I have set up before for US dollar offers. So you can see this. So the other peer, Bob, has created this offer before. And you could, when you think, okay, that's the price, what you want to take, you can jump directly into the buy or into sell screen. It's always your perspective. So when here you read buy Bitcoin, then it's what you want to do. I want to buy Bitcoin. So we said that, yeah, Alice wants to buy. So she's interested here in the buy screen. And now the offers are grayed out because we don't have set up an account yet. So when I want to buy Bitcoin, I have to pay in US dollar to the other peer. And I have to do this with a selected payment method. We are supporting quite a variety on different payment methods. And for the US, a very popular payment method is Zelle, which is a little bit something like between, I don't know, between SEPA and PayPal. Also it's a network run by different banks. It's not all banks supported, but quite the biggest banks in America support Zelle, and they are participating in this in this fast payment network, because unfortunately normal wire transfer or ACH payments in America are very inconvenient and very expensive, and slow or very unsecure, or both. Of course, there are other payment methods. When you want to have most privacy, the best is face-to-face. Then it's similar like in local Bitcoin. You meet another trader in person at the location where you define. There are a few other payment methods which are in the middle ground between bank and cash. That's Hellcash, for instance, which is used in Spain or in Poland, where you can get the cash out from the cash machine. So only the Bitcoin buyer, the one who sent the money, need a bank account, but the other only need the mobile to provide the mobile number. Then there is postal money order, and there is cash deposit, and some other stuff like MoneyGram or Western Union.
So, Manfred, who decides which payment mechanisms are available on Bisq?
Basically, everybody can request a payment method. And we have one contributor in Bisq who is specialist on this. He is investigating if the payment method fits to the Bisq exchange. A basic requirement is that it is very hard to do a chargeback, because like with PayPal, you just tell the customer care, make a chargeback and give me back the money. And that would be super insecure when the Bitcoin buyer, after he has received the Bitcoin, starts a chargeback on PayPal, and then the seller is without the Bitcoin and without the money. It would not work, of course. So we are only supporting those payment methods which are very hard to do a chargeback, where you need to provide some really proof of a scam. So when your bank account got stolen and then this criminal has emptied out your bank account, then still a chargeback can happen. But these cases are very rare, and luckily we had very few cases so far in Bisq. And once we added two payment methods, Venmo and Cash App, which are basically very similar to PayPal, and we have not investigated sufficiently. And then we had some chargeback cases, and then we kicked them out again. So that's basically our policy. We are supporting, after a preliminary investigation, we are adding a payment method. And when we find out that it's not secure, we are kicking it out again. And with the payment method, what we have at the moment, we had very, very few cases. I think with Zelle also was 1 or 2 cases. Or all in all, I think it was, beside this Cash App and Venmo issue, there have been 2 or 3 cases of chargeback in the time period of 2 years. When we started, when we launched the project. So I start here with a Zelle account name. I need to enter so the data what you need to enter here is that what you require when you do the transfer. You have to go to your online banking webpage to send the money as the Bitcoin buyer, and there you need to know the full name and the mobile number or email address of the other peer, because that's used like the account number, like the account number in the system. And we only require those data which are required by this payment method. There are some other payment methods like let me quickly, OKB, for instance, which has only a wallet ID. There is no name required. But it depends on the payment method what's required. And this data, it's very important. This data only is stored locally on your computer. It's not shared with any Bisq server or whatever. There doesn't exist any Bisq server. So the data are only private on your computer, on your application. And when you are in a trade with the other peer, you need to know the payment data of the other peer, otherwise you cannot send the money. And the other will see it anyway on the payment, so on when they receive the payment, from whom they have received. Usually they're displaying the account name or their account number or the email address here. And also they need to verify that they have received the money from the correct person. They could do in parallel 2 or 3 trades, and then it would be hard to distinguish who has paid him.
So let's assume that this account belongs to someone who is being censored by the traditional money system. Can this then be a weakness? Let's say a porn star or someone who is doing a non-violent offense, or not an offense, of course, no victim, no crime, but let's assume that the banking system does not want to provide service to this person. Can he, over that matter, still use Bisq, especially because he here has to say his name?
So there are some banks, or quite a lot of banks, which are pretty hostile to Bitcoin, and when they find out that a client is doing something with Bitcoin, they are closing accounts. That happened in the past. Reddit is full with such reports. And we also heard from some users such cases. N26 in Germany, for instance, a very they're promoting themselves as very modern payment provider, but actually they're not very modern when it comes to Bitcoin. And some British banks also, they're closing accounts when they find out that it's a Bitcoin trade. But it's very hard for them to find out, because you're not allowed to write in the reference text or in the reason for payment text field that you write anything like a Bitcoin trade or a Bisq trade that would lead to an arbitration, and you would lose your security deposit, because it's a risk for the other user then that his account get closed when the bank has such a bad policy. The only data there is the trade ID to identify the trade. And then it's very difficult for the bank to find out when I send you as a Bitcoin buyer some euro to your bank account. It's very difficult that they find out that this was a Bisq trade. Of course, they can have some policy that they don't support peer-to-peer, people who are doing peer-to-peer transactions, and only allow that people are paying their taxes and paying their electricity bills. But at the end, the bank render themselves very useless with this. So they are in a conflict as well. The more restrictive they become, that they generally don't allow that you are buying stuff or selling stuff on eBay or whatever, or on Open Bazaar or on Bisq, then you close your account and you open a better bank account. And there are luckily still enough banks out there. And there are some banks also which are quite open and supportive with Bitcoin, like Mr. Tango bank. I think it's in Lithuania. It's only an online bank, but I have pretty good experience with this. So basically, when you have problem with your bank, and it's also recommended to not use your main bank account where maybe you have tons of important services running over this. Maybe it's better to open a new bank account for trading Bitcoin, and when it gets shut down, it doesn't have so much inconvenience for you. But I think globally, they cannot say that all banks are not allowed to support anything with Bitcoin, because they cannot find out that it's Bitcoin. And and I think they would render themselves. I mean, there's competition also, and at least in Europe, there are different countries. You can move also to a bank to another country and so on. So and we have a lot of different payment methods, and there are some which are more payment providers, which are not classical banks like Perfect Money or KPay. Then there are MoneyGram or Western Union. So then postal money order. So there are quite a few of alternatives when Cell or SEPA would become very hard to use in Bisq. Of course, it would hurt us, but first it's very hard for them to apply this. And then there are alternatives, so you cannot really censor Bisq on that level.
Yeah, exactly. That's the cool thing about Bisq, right? It relies just a little bit, on the basics. It relies on these other payment systems, that they simply provide one transaction. That's all we need from this old fiat system. And as soon as one transaction somehow gets through, and again, this transaction does not look any different. It is a peer-to-peer transaction from your account from Alice's account to Bob's account, right? And if they would start censoring this as well, they are already censoring quite a bit, but if they would continue on their path down to censorship, this just provides one additional reason on why you should use Bisq. And if it comes that far, well, you probably should have used it a lot earlier. But yeah, Manfred, just please continue with the setup.
Yeah, yeah, you're completely right. And I just enter some dummy data. I think there are many Peter Smith outs. And yeah, I'm saving it here. I got some general information. I don't want to go into details of this. And basically you're done. That's the equivalent to getting an account registered in a centralized exchange. It takes here 2 seconds and you're done. And then you can start trading. I have funded already before some money here, so I have already available balance. You can fund a trade directly when you're doing the trade or from an external wallet. I will show this in a minute as well. Now you can choose, or you can see the actual Bitcoin to dollar rate here. We are taking this price from Bitcoin average. And you can see here the prices of the offers which are interesting for you. That has 1% distance to the market price, and that has 2% distance to the best offers on top. When you're okay to take this offer, yeah, you can take it. Otherwise, when you want to have a better offer with or a better trade with a better price, you can you can just set up a new offer, like saying, okay, I want to pay only 1.2% from the market price. And I want to buy, for instance, whatever, let's say I want to buy $200 in Bitcoin. And to make it easier for the other trader, because there may be people who are willing to sell only around $100, so the half of this or even less. To make it easier for other takers, potential takers, to take your offer, you can set a minimum amount. So you are willing to make a trade between 0.01 Bitcoin and 0.0308 Bitcoin. So you are defining these rules. The security deposit is predefined. You don't need to worry about this. That's recommended values. You can change it, but it's not really too relevant here at the moment. And yeah, ignore this screen. That's for the upcoming DAO. In the future, you can choose to pay the trading fee in Bitcoin or in BSQ. At the moment, the trading fees are always paid in Bitcoin. And here you see now the funds what you need to pay. So when you want to buy Bitcoin, you also need to put some money into your wallet for when a taker is taking your offer, that you can create the multisig transaction with him, because you both traders need to pay a security deposit. Because without the security deposit, the seller would have no guarantee that you are following really the trade protocol and will send the dollar to him. Maybe the Bitcoin price is changing a lot in the meantime, and then you prefer to cancel the trade and just let the seller wait, and the seller is losing a trade opportunity and losing time. So that we have an incentive, a financial incentive, that both peers are really following the contract, the trade contract. Both have to add a security deposit, which gets refunded at the end of the trade. But in case you are not following the trade protocol, for instance, when Alice would not send the dollar payment, then the seller can open up a dispute. It goes to an arbitrator. The arbitrator will investigate the case. And when he finds out that Alice was breaking the trade contract, then Alice will lose the security deposit in favor to Bob. Bob will get then this 0.01 Bitcoin, and Alice will have quite a bit of costs. It's around $70 more or less at the moment.
And how is the security deposit secured? And what specifically is this trade wallet address? And how is it different from a Bitcoin wallet address on-chain?
It's a Bitcoin address. It's an address from your wallet here. You have a local wallet. It's a SPV wallet, so it's not the full node where you have to download the whole blockchain. It's SPV model. We're using Bitcoin J for the technical-minded people. And you have a full wallet in your application, and that's one address which is defined and reserved for your trade. And important, this money, what you put now into this address, is not leaving your wallet. It stays in your wallet. It's just reserved for an offer that when your application need to be online, but maybe you are sleeping, you're not physically there. So when a taker is taking your offer, the application need to have these funds available to do the signing, and then these funds only at the time when the taker takes your offer, then this money is leaving your wallet to a multisig address, a 2 of 3 multisig, which is created with the other trader, and the third key holder is the arbitrator, who will only play a role in case of a dispute. So let's ignore it at the moment. And then the security deposit will move to into this multisig address. So the multisig address will contain the security deposits of both traders plus the trade amount what the Bitcoin seller is selling. And only after the trade is completed, so when the seller has received the dollar amount, then the seller clicks a button for confirming this, and with that, both traders are making a payout transaction where basically both agreeing that everything was fine, and then the Bitcoin buyer will receive then the trade amount and get back the security deposit as well. The Bitcoin seller get back his security deposit. So important, there is never a Bisq address where the funds are held in escrow or whatever. It's only either on your wallet locally or in a multisig, which is controlled by the 2 traders, and the arbitrator is the third key holder, who cannot spend it, of course, alone, because there's only 1 key and he would need 2 keys. And there's also here in the funds needed is also the trading fee and the mining fee. So the mining fee is required for doing this transaction that goes to the Bitcoin miners, and the trade fee is around, I think it's a little bit, yeah, the trade fee what you pay depends on the distance to the market price. When you have 1% distance to the market price, it's 0.2% of the trade amount. So when you when you're trading $100, you pay $2 in trade fee. No, sorry, 20 cents in trade fee. And when you are closer to 0, so the better your offer is, the lower is the trade fee. That's why we are here below 0.2%. And the larger your percentage is to the market price, so when you make an offer with 5 or 10% to the market price, you are actually not providing so much value to the Bisq network, because your offer probably will stick long in the offer book. It creates costs because it needs to be republished in the network. Every Bisq node is storing and is playing a part of this republishing and maintenance process. And traders are probably not very interested to take a very expensive offer. So you're not providing a lot of value. You're consuming some resources from the Bisq network, and that's why we have the policy that the fees should be higher, so that we're incentivizing users to have a low distance to the market price and to make good offers which get quickly taken by another trader. So now, now I can choose. I have already some Bitcoin here in available balance. I funded it before, and I can choose to take this directly from the Bisq wallet, or I can choose to fund this trade from an external wallet. And with that, I would get a little bit better security, privacy, when I'm not mixing different trades with current coin merchants on. But it's quite a complex topic, and those who are familiar with the complexity of privacy on the Bitcoin blockchain, they should check it out and learn a little bit more about this. For the other users, it's usually probably more convenient to have their money in your wallet and deal with this. So yeah, now I've taken out the money from my available balance, and I'm ready now to place the offer. I get a confirmation screen where I can see all the details again. And basically with this commitment, it's like a contract. When publishing an offer, I agree that everybody who wants to take the offer, I'm willing to trade with him or her.
So you mentioned briefly here more privacy that you could add to this. Just a little aside, would it be possible to have stuff like coin joins already integrated in the Bisq client?
Yeah, that's actually on the long-term roadmap. It's just too many other important stuff what we need to do first to get Bisq really completed. As one thing which we hopefully will launch soon is the Bisq DAO, what we can talk about it later. That's a very important part. That's basically how the Bisq project is built and managed and funded. And another part will be to make the arbitration system really decentralized. That's at the moment not completely finished like it should be. And CoinJoin is for sure an important and interesting topic, but we have also some other plans which are a little bit maybe too much for getting covered here. But basically, we have some ideas for an off-chain trade protocol where the trade is not on the blockchain anymore at all. And with that, you don't have these problems with on-chain privacy issues. And probably this solution will solve so many other problems in parallel that we will probably focus our energy more in this direction. But basically, Bisq is an open source project. It's free and permissionless. Anybody can join it and can work on it. It would not be very difficult to implement the CoinJoin. I think the biggest challenge will be to have it from a user experience and usability implemented in a very easy and in an easy way where it doesn't annoy the user, where you don't need to do a lot of work to get your coins joined. And probably also would be good to have it in a semi-automatic way, that you have just a pool where you say, okay, from my 20 Bitcoin here, I want to get 10 Bitcoin in a pool and they get joined, and I want to get a level of 7 rounds of CoinJoin or whatever. And then you just leave it in a pool and the software is doing it automatically over time. Something like this would be nice, but that's a conceptual challenge and usability challenge, and then of course technical as well. So
that is amazing. And here on Open Source Everything, we've talked a lot to Noparo, who's working on the Wasabi wallet, another open source project that everyone should absolutely check out. So I'm excited like a little kitty to just explore the borders here and the edge cases of how we can make Bitcoin even more private, and especially the exchange part, because exiting the fiat system and moving it into Bitcoin is a critical step. So yeah, please, Manfred, continue with the discussion.
Yeah, I'm actually in loose contacts with him, and yeah, he's a great guy and doing great work. And also with the other guys from Join Market. One guy was actually one of the first contributors and helped a lot in the very beginning. And yeah, it's for sure an important topic. I'm just not 100% convinced if CoinJoin itself is really the best solution for getting privacy. Something like with Lightning, where you're getting off-chain, is maybe more efficient and easier, and hopefully we'll see some privacy improvements on the protocol side, like confidential transactions, and yeah, maybe something even like we have in Monero with ring signatures or other stuff. But yeah, there were exciting development on the Bitcoin core side as well. So jumping back here, yeah. So I have created here the offer. I can manage my offer in my open offers in portfolio, and I can even edit the offer and change the price, for instance. Or I can disable it when I say, okay, now the price has moved too much. I want to go offline again with my offer, and then re-enable it later. And as you have seen in the network, it gets republished immediately. And yeah, when you want to buy Bitcoin, it is interesting for somebody who will sell Bitcoin. That's why you see it on the opposite screen. That's always a little bit confusing. When you want to buy, you're creating a sell offer. Sorry, your buy offer is in the sell screen. And when you want to buy, you are seeing the sell offers. But anyway, you should not care about this because you don't care about your offer if it's visible here or here. You only want basically to care about it here in my that you can manage your offer and can remove it as well. And the other peer who want to sell Bitcoin can see your offer now. And maybe he's in a hurry and don't want to wait until his own offers get taken. So he want to take your offer. And let's go here. So because there was a possible range between 0.1 and 0.3 Bitcoin, he could choose to only take whatever, or a small amount, and then go next. Ignore the screen again. Here's also just information about the amount what you need to fund your wallet. It's part of the trade amount, the security deposit, the trading fee, and the mining fee.
And so here is the first time where you actually make a on-chain Bitcoin transaction?
It's also on when you create an offer, you are paying the trading fee with the Bitcoin transaction. So that goes to the arbitrator, to one of the arbitrators, and that's a Bitcoin transaction. And with this Bitcoin transaction, you're also moving out the money from your wallet. Maybe you have sitting 20 Bitcoin on one address, and yeah, you are moving out the money what you need for this offer to another address, so you have it really reserved for this offer. But remember that's has not left your wallet. That's still, you are under control of this money. That's still in your wallet. It's just that you cannot spend it unintentionally. So when you go here and send some money to somebody, you cannot spend this 0.1 Bitcoin, which is reserved for the offer, because otherwise nobody could take your offer because you don't have the money anymore. That's why it's separated here, but technically it's in your wallet. And the Bitcoin seller, it's basically the same. When he takes the offer, he creates first a trading fee transaction where he pays the arbitrator, and then he is making a handshake with the other peer. That's why the offer maker need to be online, that he's reachable. And they are exchanging the data, what is required for the trade, and creating together this multisig transaction and publishing the multisig transaction to the network. And with that moment, the money is locked in the multisig, and nobody of the two traders can access the fund what they put in alone anymore. So they need to cooperate to get out at the end the payment by following the trade protocol. So maybe I do here the other way, to use an external wallet. Just get some information that you have to use a minimum amount of mining fee. And when you use Bitcoin Core, for instance, you get it filled automatically here with this data. Otherwise, you need to copy over the data, the amount what you want to send, and the address where you want to send it. And yeah, I just send it here. So in this case, I have not taken it from my local wallet. I have taken it from an external. And yeah. So, and now we are already, now the trade has started, the multisig transaction has been published. And now we need to wait for at least one blockchain confirmation to avoid double spend attacks before the sender has to do the fiat payment. And usually, I mean, of course, it can be that you get it confirmed in a few seconds or minutes. In average, it's 10 minutes on the Bitcoin blockchain. And here we don't want to wait for 10 minutes. So we are using this local setup with rectest, where we can create blocks by the command line. So I create a new block. So that in reality, it would have happened that a new block have been created, and the multisig transaction, the trade transaction, has been included in this block. And then the Bitcoin buyer gets this information that he need to send the $130 to the sell account of the other trader. That's here my name and my dummy email address. And when he closes, he is here the data again. And the payment of the fiat or also the altcoin, that's out of system. So you have to go to your online banking webpage or payment provider webpage or whatever system you're using and do the payment there. And when you have completed this, or in the case of an altcoin, when you do an altcoin trade, you have to go to your altcoin wallet and make the payment to the other, to the address of the other peer. And when you have done this, you are confirming it that you have started the payment. And you have here all the information what you need to do this payment, which is always different depending on the payment method. And here it's important.
And how is this communication done, and how it is securely or how is it secured that this private information is not public to everyone?
All this data which is communicated between those two traders are direct messages, as we're using Tor hidden services. Also the Bisq peer-to-peer network is based on Tor hidden services. So every Bisq node is a Tor hidden service. So you get all the privacy and security from the Tor network. Additionally on that, we are encrypting and signing all the messages. And all the private messages, of course, when you're publishing an offer, it cannot be encrypted, otherwise nobody could read it. So those are public data, but they don't contain any payment details. So when you are creating an offer, your payment details are not part of the offer. It's only the information which is required for somebody to make the decision to take the offer, and your onion address, which is your network identity, similar like an IP address in the normal internet. But with an onion address, you are completely private and nobody can find out your real IP address and your real identity. And this communication, when you do a trade with another peer, that's direct communication between the two peers. Nobody else is involved, and we're using public symmetric encryption here. So you have the public key from the other peer, you're encrypting it with that, and only the other peer with this private key can decrypt the message and and can process the message. All this code is, of course, open source, and anybody is welcome to check it out and check the code and hopefully find maybe some things to improve. And so you don't need to trust anybody. Of course, when you're not a developer, you have to trust in a way some other people, but that's the same like with everything. Also with Bitcoin, you have to trust the developers who are able to read and understand the code, that there are no backdoors and there are nothing hidden, but everything is completely open and transparent, and you can compile it by yourself. And so yeah, and here when you do the payment, it's important to use this reason for payment and nothing else. Because when you would say here, $130 for a Bitcoin trade or for a Bisq trade, the bank could find out that this account holder, this client, is involved in Bitcoin trading, and maybe their policy states they don't want to have clients who are doing Bitcoin because they're competition, and kick and close the account. And to avoid this damage, you have to to be strict, follow strict this rule that you use only this and nothing else in the reason for payment field. So just confirming that I've done the payment. Immediately the other peer receives the information that the Bitcoin buyer has started the payment, and then it depends on the payment method. If the seller has received the money immediately, there are some payment methods which are instant or which are very fast at least. I think Cell is quite fast, and usually it arrives in the same day. With SEPA, it depends on the country. In some countries, it's also the same day. In other countries, can take 2 or 3 days. Shady businesses of banks that they're working with your money in the background and are not giving access. But that's basically out of our system. We cannot do anything about this. But when you use a payment method which is fast, you can get a very fast trade experience also. And as soon, so here, the Bitcoin seller, he has to go to his Cell webpage or banking webpage, which supports Cell, and check if he has received the money. When he has received the money, he confirms with this button click that, yes, I received the payment. And very important here, by clicking this button, the trade has completed and the Bitcoin are released to the Bitcoin buyer. And because Bitcoin is irreversible, when you do a mistake and you click this button without checking, and then maybe you never receive the dollar payment, nobody can help you. So you have to be, of course, sure that you are, that you checked that you received the dollar, and only then you're clicking here the OK button. And with that, both have received back their security deposit. The Bitcoin buyer, Alice here, she has bought 0.02 Bitcoin. She has paid $130, and here are the fees. And for the seller, it's the opposite. He has sold 0.2 Bitcoin, 0.02 Bitcoin, and he has received $130. And now again, when you're very privacy concerned, you can withdraw the money to an external wallet. And then when you keep this funds from these external wallets very separated with other trades, that you have maybe 3 or 4 different wallets on mobile, on whatever, and you are not mixing these coins together between different trades, then you have more protection online, also on-chain privacy protection, because otherwise attackers and analysis of the blockchain can find out that there was one Bisq trade, because a Bisq trade with the multisig have a certain kind of fingerprint. you can detect, okay, that's probably a Bisq trade. And when you see, okay, then the output of this payout transaction is used as input for another trade, then you can derive the information that probably that's the same user who has done these both trades. So you're losing some privacy when you're using their internal wallet. You have higher risk that you are merging these coins. It's a complex topic, and you have to be quite knowledgeable about how transaction really works, and so to understand this. I think for most people it's too difficult to deal with this, and that's why I think privacy solutions best on the protocol level, or at least something like CoinJoin, that wallets automatically have CoinJoin added, and you don't need to worry so much anymore about this, is really important, because privacy at the moment on Bitcoin is rather weak. But actually, I mean, you're private, even if somebody can find out that some transactions are done by the same user, as long as you are not leaking your personal identifying data, that your real life identity is tied to these transactions, you are still pretty good. But of course, when you're buying Bitcoin on Coinbase, yeah, they have all the data, and then they can follow your transactions on the blockchain and can find out much, much more, as most people would expect. Chain analysis, unfortunately, a very developed area, and they're very powerful, and they're doing it. All the exchanges, all their probably the block explorers are part of this ecosystem, and the banks and governmental agency probably are paying for getting this data, and then they're applying some heuristics on your coins. And when you, for some reasons, because the coins what you have received have been maybe used someone in the past for buying marijuana from another user, was not even connected to you, but then it might lead that Coinbase is blocking your account, and you got into troubles, and even in the worst case, confiscating your account, and you lose your Bitcoin. So it's a very bad development and very bad state. And I think to get better privacy is not only important for you, for yourself, but also important for Bitcoin as a solid money system, because without fungibility, when you cannot be sure that the Bitcoin what you receive from somebody else is really a valid Bitcoin and couldn't be confiscated because of some obscure reasons, then people will not accept Bitcoin because it's too risky just. And that would be the same with dollar. When in a supermarket and you pay with $1 and they need to check every time if this dollar bill was not used or somewhere in a whatever drug dealer or whatever in the past, nobody would accept dollar because there's way too much risk and costs. So I think it's really very important for Bitcoin as money to have privacy, to get the privacy problem fixed and get it in a better state. And I think the exchange, the gateway to the fiat, is probably the most important aspect here, beside, of course, to getting privacy on the on-chain.
Absolutely, because the fiat system is completely rigged with know your customer, anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing, and all these other nonsensical laws and regulations that really only take away your privacy and don't help whatsoever defend against criminals or prevent anything from happening. And quite on the contrary, I would argue. And so having a exchange that gives the most private form that we can get to buy Bitcoin with fiat or other shitcoins, then this is good, right? It's not perfect, yes, because the fiat side is not perfect, and of course Bitcoin is not as well. But at least it's a step in the right direction. And then talking about privacy on Bitcoin, you mentioned that it is running a SPV client. As far as I understand it, Bitcoin J is using Bloom filters, but I'm not 100% certain there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And we have kind of like a partial solution. That was a big pain always in the past, because the Bloom filter implementation is conceptually broken, and additionally, implementation-wise, completely broken on Bitcoin J. So basically, when you're connecting to the public network with a Bitcoin J wallet, which, for instance, Android Bitcoin wallet or many other Bitcoin wallets are based on Bitcoin J, then you have basically nearly zero privacy. Any chain analysis company which runs a full node and observing the data and collecting data there, when you're connecting to them, they are getting your Bloom filter, and can very easily find out that all the wallet, all your addresses from your wallet belong to the same user. So they can map together that the 200 addresses what created by default at startup are all the same user. When one wallet is connected with a real life identity because you used it at Coinbase or wherever, then they know all these addresses belong to this identity. So it's pretty bad. The good thing is that we last year we have a kind of like a middle ground fix for this. It's not a perfect fix because it introduced a little bit of a trust and centralization issue, but we created a setup there where trusted Bisq developers, also not only developers who work directly for Bisq, but other developers who I know personally and who I trust. For instance, Jochen Hönicke, who is working on Tracer, and he's scientists, and some other people working on universities and so on. So people with high reputation, or Bisq developers, they are running full nodes, and we are providing a list of those provided Bitcoin full nodes. And by default, when you start Bisq, it's connecting only to those full nodes, and those are not operated by Chainalysis company. They are not selling the data. So when you trust that they are honest and that they are not hacked by Chainalysis companies to steal the data, then you can be sure that this Bloom filter issue is not an issue anymore for you. But of course, as I said, it introduced a little bit of trust issue, and it introduced a centralization issue because, of course, there are roughly 10 people who are doing this. It's not terrible bad, but it would be better to have a broader network. But of course, everybody is welcome to join and to ask to get added to this trusted network. Of course, I need to have a kind of like a trust relationship. When it's an anonymous person who I don't know, I cannot add him. But when he has some reputation where I'm pretty sure that this is an honest person, we can add them as well. And beside that, of course, it's optional. The user can select it in the settings. So I don't show it here. That's not important. But in the settings, the user can choose to opt out of this and to connect either to your local node. That's the best option when you have a local Bitcoin full node running. That's actually by default when you have a local node running. And if it is fully synced and not running in pruned node mode, then you are connecting to the local node. And with that, you don't need to trust somebody else. You are trusting yourself. And beside that, you can define a hosted node when you have it running on a server or whatever, your own node, what you provide, or somebody and who runs a full node and trusts this person, and then you're putting in the address of that node, or you're opting in to connect to the public network. Then you get a warning that you lose your privacy. Basically, you are much more at risk to losing your privacy. But of course, people can opt out and can do this when they want to. So I think the compromise is good enough. Nobody's forced to go to this kind of semi-trusted node. But with that, we have at least a temporary solution because the Bloom filters are conceptually broken. So even if the implementation problems are fixed, it's still very weak privacy model. And luckily, there's some development with client-side Bloom filters, but that will still take time to get it usable. And hopefully in 1 year or so, we have another implementation for the Bitcoin wallet, which has much better privacy.
So it's already great that you give the opportunity to connect to your own Bitcoin full node, which is of course the goal, right? This is how it should be. But then further, there are other ways of being more private as a pruned client, right? And for example, have you looked into neutrino clients? Because as I understand, they do not only query for one specific transaction, but rather for the entire block or even several blocks, and thus increasing the anonymity set greatly.
Yeah, I have not looked closer into it. We had rough plans to replace the Bitcoin chain implementation with a Bitcoin Core version, which runs in SPV mode, or in a kind of SPV mode. As without Bloom filter, it's a way where you don't need to download the full blockchain and where you don't need to wait 1 day or so before you can start. Otherwise, it would be a usability killer for Bisq. And also there's some work from Jonas Schnelli going on there. It's still not merged into Bitcoin, and I'm not sure if it will ever be merged. There's not too much activity there, unfortunately, but that's a very interesting model. But it's a lot of development effort. It will take us for sure a few months or half a year to get this implemented, and at the moment we don't have the resources. Another very interesting development are hardware devices, especially the company from Jonas Schnelli in Switzerland. I think how it's called, Bitcoin Box, I think.
Bitbox.
Bitbox, yeah. It's a great company doing fantastic stuff, and they are basically, they want to provide a hardware box which you just plug into electricity, and you get everything there by default. So you don't need to install anything or whatever. So you have your full node there. It would be great to get Bisq pre-installed there, or at least easily to get installed as well, and to get the ability to use the hardware wallet device connected with Bisq, that we have basically support for a hardware wallet in Bisq as well. And luckily, we are in contact with one who works there and who is a Bisq support as well. And hopefully, in future, we will find more synergy between those two projects who have a lot in common. And
yes, the Bitbox is really, really cool. And having a hardware wallet implementation is really important, because that is, at least currently, one of the most security-oriented but still usable way of storing your precious Satoshis. So, for example, here I have the Coldcard wallet, which is already amazing because, for example, upon many other cool features, it allows for partially signed Bitcoin transactions, which give the opportunity of signing all this stuff completely offline in a 100% air-gapped way, or you just connect this here to a local power bank, so it's not connected to the internet whatsoever. Could partially signed Bitcoin transactions be used in Bisq?
That's interesting, because we were looking into Trace already a year ago, and we failed. It was difficult to get it implemented. Basically, we wanted to have only kind of like a cold storage wallet in Bisq, and a secondary wallet, which is then connected with Tracer, where when you have a lot of Bitcoin in your Bisq wallet, that you move it to a kind of like cold storage there. The Bitcoin, what you need as a maker available, because you need to make this transaction signing non-interactively. There's no user who clicks a button on Tracer to get the transaction signed when a taker is taking your offer. So I think that would not work with Tracer, at least in the moment. I think they're not supporting this. I'm not 100% aware. I'm not following too much the details, what was going on in the meantime. But at least with Bitbox, I'm not sure if it's already possible. At least it's on the roadmap that they want to support such features that you can use it for such use cases like we have in Bisq at the moment. And what you just showed, that sounds exciting, that it might be usable for the use case in Bisq to have it supported for the trade protocol, where you need to make a non-interactive signing.
Cool, and especially I like to show this project because it is 100% open source as well. Open source hardware and open source software and firmware. This is done by the peers who also gave us the amazing OpenDime wallet. So the peers at CoinKite. It is a really, really cool wallet that I just continuously like to show.
Yeah, it's a fantastic project.
And maybe,
by the way,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with open source, I think just to mention, for most of your listeners, it's probably obvious, but any project which operates in Bitcoin and is not running everything open source, you should not take fully serious. Then you're basically back to the conventional fiat world or so, where you trust a trusted third party, and it's not in the spirit of Bitcoin. So any, especially hardware wallet or wallet provider, when they are not fully open source and really open source, not just some client software is open source and then there is the server which is doing the important stuff and there is nothing open source, then it's already a broken model, in my opinion. And another side note, what I want to mention, it's not maybe a little bit off topic at the moment, but most people are not aware that Satoshi in his pre-released version, so before he released the official version of Bitcoin, he has implemented, or he started to implement the marketplace there. So there was code. It was not finished and it was incomplete, but there was code for a marketplace inside of the Bitcoin, Bitcoin Core wallet software. And that just shows that Satoshi was very aware that it's really important to enable the gateway between Bitcoin. I'm not sure if it was more considered as like open bazaar, a marketplace between goods and services, or more as an exchange. Probably covers both, but at least I think he was very aware of the importance to that a money system alone is not enough. You need to have also the infrastructure, which follows the same principle that's really peer-to-peer and really censorship resistant for using this money. And using it wants to convert it from the fiat world, and then of course using it for exchanging real goods and services.
Oh yeah, cool. And you know, that is the fundamental idea of Bitcoin, peer-to-peer, right? No middleman, just you and me, just Alice and Bob, nobody else. And that's really cool. So yesterday I talked with Josh from Voltoro, and he said that the Voltoro is now, of course, it is a gold to Bitcoin and Bitcoin to gold exchange, 100% reserved, fully transparent, and as I believe, a lot of it is open source. And he was talking that they are working heavily on implementing the Lightning Network, precisely because you as a market taker, so those that do not make the orders, but simply look at the order book and decide, I want to have this specific transaction, I want to have this specific trade, they can easily, with the Lightning Network, simply pay for the exchange directly from their client or from their phone, without any delays whatsoever, and they can take the order with a unreversible Bitcoin transaction. So how could you use Lightning Network in Bisq?
Yeah, Lightning, of course, it's a very interesting and exciting development, and we we have started to look a little bit closer into it. But the main problem with the current trade protocol is that it's based on the security of, also on the multisig transaction as the main security tool, and there are no solutions for Lightning for this. There are rough ideas how you could mimic a multisig on Lightning with basically different commitments, and you have, instead of the keys, you have several commitments, and that you need 2 or 3 or 2 out of 3 commitments. But nobody is really working on this. It's just basically a rough idea, and there is no realistic chance that this get implemented in the next 1 or 2 years. So I'm not, we cannot count on this. Of course, to make some payments and to add Lightning support for the wallet would be cool. Bitcoin J at the moment is not supporting Lightning, or they're working on it as well, but it's still not supporting, and we are depending on Bitcoin J. So that's a reason why why you cannot really use Lightning in with Bisq. But the main problem will be, of course, when you want to use your Bitcoin in a Bisq trade, then we are depending on the multisig feature, and that's not possible in Lightning. So basically,
that makes a lot of sense, because you do need to have this multisig to trust to not trust that the other party is sending you the money or not. But maybe what would be interesting would be a splicing in transaction. So using the on-chain transaction out of the Bisq exchange, so doing the normal Bisq fiat to Bitcoin exchange as you just showed, but then the payout to Alice who is buying Bitcoin, not just on-chain, but also using this on-chain transaction to fund a Lightning payment channel. So maybe you could kind of combine the purchase of Bitcoin with a peer-to-peer fiat exchange, and then directly open the peer-to-peer payment channel, which you can then use to connect to Lightning. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I think that would be possible. I'm just not really sure if, of course, it would be a cool feature for people who want to use the Lightning as a extra wallet, where they do stuff then as a Lightning wallet and get the money directly out of the trade to fund a channel. But they can do it with one other step, with doing a normal transaction. Then it's more flexible and easier. I mean, we have some rough plans for another interesting alternative to the current trade protocol, which solve a lot of the problems, like I said before, on the privacy level, but also on the problematic with the arbitrator. That's very difficult with the current system to decentralize the arbitration system. Because the arbitrator is the key holder of the multisig, and that's based on the Bisq DAO. And there will be a token, a color coin token, the BSQ token, and there will be one feature which we call bonding. It's basically a kind like a security deposit, but it has a different technical implementation, which is not based on multisig. And with this feature, we can build a new trade protocol, which is completely off-chain, where you don't need to even any cryptocurrency involved. You can change dollar to euro directly, and the trade is secured by bonds on both trader sides. So both traders need to set up their BSQ bond, and with this bond, it's a little bit like a lightning channel. You're opening a channel, and you're opening a bond, and with this bond, when this bond is like covers $5,000, then you can trade up to $5,000 in parallel. When you want to trade more, you need to increase your bond. Otherwise, you can. When you stick in this limit, then you can trade up to this amount, and then you don't need any blockchain transaction, because however you send the stuff what you're trading is then completely up to the user. So, and then we are much more flexible. You can trade Monero to dollar directly, and you can trade even dollar to euro. There is no need for a Bitcoin transaction, so you don't have any problems with privacy because there is no on-chain transaction anymore. We don't have the problem with the arbitrator holding the third key, because the arbitrator, there's no multisig anymore, and the arbitrator is just a service provider and much more flexible. But to understand this more, we would need to talk more about the DAO. I don't know how is the time and
Well, I think I could continue this discussion for hours and hours on with no end. Well, we really haven't talked too much about the DAO yet, so that is something that I would like to get into a bit more, just for the brief time that we have left. And fundamentally, the question would be. Is this another shitcoin? Is this another useless token that is going to go to the moon? And has there been a ICO where you raised billions of dollars to now get a bunch of Lambos? Or is this really something that deserves a bit more attention?
Yeah, I think, of course, there's a lot of valid concerns from the Bitcoin community, because there's so much scam going on in the space, and especially with this ICO coins and so on. But anybody who knows a little bit about the Bisq project, the project is now 5 years, so I started it 5 years ago. I have not earned any money at the end so far, and it's built by volunteers who believe in the project. We're doing everything transparent and open. We have never made an ICO. We never want to make an ICO. So anybody who looks a little bit on Bisq should give us at least a little bit of time and their energy to listen to it and how it works, and step back a little bit from this negative reaction, because also this negative reaction is a little bit similar like outsiders of Bitcoin. They only hear about all the scams when Mt. Gox get damaged, and all the time all these scams and the criminals are using Bitcoin. And when you tell them about Bitcoin, they immediately react, Bitcoin, that's scam and just for criminals and whatever. And you need a little bit of time to get over it, to understand it really. And a little bit something similar happens now in the Bitcoin space, with Bitcoin maximalists, with people who really believe in the core values of Bitcoin. They are, because of all these scams, they are very have a lot of negative reaction in the first place. When you say you're working on a DAO, or when you're building your own token, they say immediately, scam, go away. So I will briefly try to summarize why the Bisq DAO is not a scam, and why the Bisq token is not a scam coin, and why we are not doing, or why it's not an ICO, and why it's not possible to use Bitcoin for that, what we need, and what's the core features of this. We will not have time to get deep into it, because that will take another 1 or 2 hours. But whatever, maybe you want to follow up with, I'm super excited to get deep into it. And actually, I'm in the process at the moment to make a kind of like a video series of introduction into the DAO and to explain it. I've done one video already with a high level overview, and I want to follow up with more technical video series, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we can combine this to have such a interview session as part of this series. Yeah, so I have to step back a little bit to the open source setup. I mean, Bisq is an open source project. It's permissionless. Everybody can work on it. But why somebody should work on it when they can earn a lot of money, when somebody's a good developer? And yeah, he can earn a lot of money in the Bitcoin space. There are a lot of companies, everybody's hiring, everybody needing developers. And most people need to pay their bills. So there are not too many people out who are rich enough to have the luxury to just do whatever they want, to not be concerned about money at all. And then it's also the question, when they are working for something valuable, why should not they get the compensation? I mean, why should people work for free? This pure altruism, luckily it exists, and there are people who are motivated by pure altruism. But at the end, there are very few. You cannot scale up with this because you don't find enough people to implement all the cool stuff what we want to implement. We are still a quite small group of developers who are mainly motivated by altruism. Otherwise, they would not have worked on this in the early days when the risks were very high that this will never end up in anything. And yeah, but all these people who have worked in the past on Bisq, they should get the compensation one day for this, because they've created some value. When people are using Bisq, they get a value out of it. They can make an exchange, can make money with it, and get some service for this. So I think it's fair that to have a value exchange from the users who are using Bisq to those who are building and who are working on it. And it's also not always fun. There's quite a lot of work which is no fun at all, like bug fixing, doing support. And yeah, we have to do this as well, because otherwise we would lose users. And when we would only do the fun thing, like conceptual work, and then never launch a project, like many other projects are doing, they're writing white papers and have great ideas. And then when it comes to their not so fun work to really implement the stuff and do the bug fixing and make it production ready, then they stop working on it, and the world is never seeing this stuff. Yeah, that's probably a reason why we don't see I mean, there are luckily some CoinJoin implementations, but not too many, because they're not the easy business model around, and the few people who are really working on it, it's hard for them to scale up and to make it really production and ready and easy to use for people. So there are real problems. And of course, it can be that like in Bitcoin and in Linux, it happens that for some very good coincidences and some, of course, some talents from the founders, like when the founder have great combination of skills, social skills, and be very invitive to other people, and very good communication skills, and attracts, and of course, the code, of course, has to be all super high quality. So they attract a lot of people, and there's real demand at the right time. When you have all this coincidence at the same place, it can happen, like it happened with Bitcoin, like it happened with Linux and some other cool project, maybe IPFS in the beginning. Then it can happen that you get hundreds of developers and the project bootstrap and become super successful without the need for any funding. And you get those developers who have the luxury that they work on Google or whatever, in Google or whatever, and on the side, on the weekend, they're doing the fun projects and contribute on a high quality to those projects. But there are other millions of open source projects which don't have this luck, because maybe just of lack of talent. That are, I mean, I personally don't have this talent for communication and being invitive to all the potential developers out in the world to attract them to Bisq. I'm not as good as this. So yeah, I didn't, of course, I have at least some talent because I found some developer, and we have a group of developers working on Bisq, but it's not enough to bootstrap the project where we want to get to implement all these plans what we have in the future with off-chain trade protocol, with CoinJoin, with many more ideas. And so we need a kind of like a funding model. I should make it short. The funding models which are out there, one for the open source world is this services and products and services based on your open source technology, like the Red Hat model, basically. So you are building the infrastructure, then you are the specialist on this technology, and then you have some clients who are willing to pay for your services. That can work. It's a very long way to get there, and it's very difficult, and it takes quite a lot of time. And at the end, you are becoming a centralized company. You need to run it as a company. You are depending on your clients. Maybe you have 2 or 3 big clients, and at the end, they are owning then the company. So it's a possible way, but it's not the best way for sure. To hope on donations, we tried this and we got luckily some donations in the early days. It's now quite good because the Bitcoin price is so high, so it's something like 25 Bitcoin. But back when we got the donations, it was around $10,000 or $15,000 what we got in the donation. So that's basically what altruistic people on donations are willing to spend. That's more or less their salary of a good developer in the Bitcoin space per month. So we can pay one developer for 1 month, and then the donations are gone, which the donation what we collected over 5 years. So as you see, that's also not a good solution. Then of course ICOs is, we don't believe in ICOs. So I locked this out. Investors, to ask investors, then you're depending on the investor. You have to create a company. You have to make, you're completely locked into the traditional systems with lawyers, and Open Bazaar went this path, and I don't think that was a good idea. But anyway, that's something what I don't want to do. So at the end, you run out of ideas how you can fund such a project. And luckily, we have programmable money. So why not build an economic model with programmable money? And you are basically creating a new layer. So when Bitcoin is based on information technology, that the information layer is the ground layer for Bitcoin. Without the internet, Bitcoin would not work. And when you understand Bitcoin, then you see that it's something different, like the information layer. The people who say blockchain but not Bitcoin, they don't understand it. They see Bitcoin as a database. It's not a database. That's information layer database. Bitcoin is money. It's trust, or it's a trustless exchange of value. So it has been created something new, which is not possible on the pure information layer. And I think the DAOs, the basic ideas of a decentralized autonomous organization, unfortunately, we don't have found a better term, and the term is unfortunately a little bit destroyed by Dead DAO from Slockit, which have ruined Ethereum a few years ago, and which created a huge damage for the term and for the idea. But at the end, the basic concept of a DAO, that you have an organization which is based on code, which is autonomous, and which is decentralized. I think this is still a valid idea. And with cryptocurrencies, or with the technology of cryptocurrencies and peer-to-peer networks, we can build another layer on top of Bitcoin, which is a kind of like an economic layer, which is basically a virtual company or a virtual organization, which is taking care of properties where Bitcoin itself is not built for, like governance, voting, funding. I mean, you cannot do this directly in Bitcoin. You cannot vote on Bitcoin directly. Of course, you can build systems which are using Bitcoin to make some kind of voting systems, like we have implemented in the DAO. But that's not Bitcoin. That's extending Bitcoin to a next level. And we are not competing with this token, what we're using. We are not competing as money on the Bitcoin layer. We are creating a token for a layer above the money layer. It's like stocks for companies are not competing with the dollar. They are different. They are representing the value of a company. They are not representing a universal token for exchange, or like money is doing. And
maybe could you go a bit more into the precise method of how you use this DAO to fund yourself?
Yeah, that's now the basic idea of the DAO is very old, and it goes back in the late 90s, basically, when there was an artist, a Swiss artist, what's his name? I forgot his name, sorry. But he made a project which was called Google Will Eat Itself. And he created web pages, fake web pages where he earned money by Google ads. And so he was stealing basically money from Google by such hacked web pages. And with the money what he earned from Google, he was buying shares from Google, and he was trying to buy up Google by this, and then decentralize and give Google to the public as a common good, because he thought that Google, such an important infrastructure, should not be run as a centralized company and a profit-oriented company. It should be a public good and should be controlled by the users, and he wanted to give it back to the users. That was the concept. Of course, he got then into legal troubles and they shut him down. But I think he managed to get $300,000, and I don't know how it turned out then at the end. But their basic idea is fantastic, and I think that's for me the core idea of a DAO. I think there are some elements like Bitcoin itself or like an exchange, which should be something like a common good, and it should be in the public, in the hand of the public, and it shouldn't be directly profit orientated by their. It can be profit orientated when the majority of the stakeholders are interested to make the maximum profit. Okay, then they can do it. But anybody who is not agreeing this can fork it and can make a different alternative. With Google, you cannot do this. When you say, okay, let's fork Google and make a more privacy preserving version of Google, yeah, good luck. You will not succeed with this. And when I started Bisq, the DAO was also from the very beginning my preferred funding model. It was just very, very difficult to find a solution, and mainly because of the legal restrictions. With when you have a token which is similar to a share of a company, you fall into all kind of regulatory bullshit. And I mean, they make maybe sense in some way for some centralized companies and so on, and they have developed over the past historically, because there have been a lot of scams. But I think we need new solutions for the new stuff what we are doing. And fighting with this regulatory requirements actually helped the project a lot and led to the current version of the DAO to make it really fully decentralized and censorship resistant. Because I knew when I make a foundation in Switzerland, which is doing then the payout to the contributors, then this is the centralized point of failure, and they will apply the pressure when Bisq would become bigger. So at the end, this regulatory requirements helped, was a positive influence. And yeah, how is the Bisq token working? So the Bisq token is the vehicle which makes the value transfer from the users to the contributors. So the users who are paying the trading fee, they should basically be the funding source for the contributors who are getting paid. Of course, you have several problems here, because like in every startup, in the beginning, the revenue is not enough to pay the costs, and you need to invest to get the project built. And then later, over a few years, when the project is successful, the investors get back a return for their risk, what they were taking. So that's another aspect which is typical for every company when it's not when it's at least something new and something risky. And so basically you need to find people who are willing to take some risk, and with this risk taking, they have the chance to get something back, of course. And they are putting in some money into the system that they are helping to bootstrap the system until their break even is reached, where the revenue is really covering the costs. And yeah, the BSQ token, technically it's a color coin token. A color coin is basically it's Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin transaction where you are defining certain rules, where you say, okay, this Bitcoin Satoshi has the meaning of this asset, like a BSQ. In our case, it's 100 Bitcoin Satoshi, it's one BSQ. And the rules, what makes a BSQ valid, are defined by our system. We're using the Bisq peer-to-peer network for transacting some metadata additionally to the blockchain data. Also, we are using the Bitcoin blockchain with the return for carrying some special data which is required, but we are trying to limit it to the very, very minimum. It's usually timestamping, also some hashes, to provide proof for some other peer-to-peer network data, to have the security of the Bitcoin layer for the data which are in the peer-to-peer network, because the peer-to-peer network doesn't have the same properties like the Bitcoin blockchain. But of course, with that, we're avoiding that we are floating the Bitcoin blockchain with putting all the data on the blockchain, which becomes very expensive and they cannot scale. And with that, we can build a system where we are defining what's valid to create new tokens. Creating new tokens is a little bit like a miner in Bitcoin. By consensus, by the network rules, it's defined when a miner finds a hash, which is verified by every full node that it confirms to certain properties. Then he has the right to create the block reward out of thin air in the Bitcoin blockchain. In our system, you cannot create Bitcoin out of thin air. For that, we would have needed to create an own blockchain, but that would have been very difficult and problematic from the security point of view. So for Bitcoin, you need to put in some Bitcoin amount, but this Bitcoin amount is very small in relation to the BSQ amount what you are creating out of this. And it's a little bit, so this color coin tokens, like Mastercoin was the first one, and Counterparty and a few others, they are usually starting with a Genesis transaction. And that's also how we start. So we are creating one Bitcoin transaction, which is defined as the Genesis of the Bisq tokens, where we are putting in 2.5 Bitcoin from what we received from our donations, and we are issuing 2.5 million BSQ tokens. So this 2.5 million Bitcoin, they are, I think, something like 25 billion Satoshi or something like this. I'm not sure if the number is correct. And they are 2.5 million Bitcoin BSQ tokens, and those are distributed to all the past contributors who have worked historically on the project. And that's a distribution I made, sorry, I made based on my estimation of the relative value of the contributions, what those people have done. And then after this, we have a voting cycle every month where all the BSQ stakeholders, everybody who has BSQ, can vote on contribution requests. So every contributor who works on Bisq, and this work can be anything from code or the development work or anything else which adds value to the Bisq network, like translations or support or whatever, making a video for explaining Bisq to other users. And yeah, they make a compensation request where they say, okay, for my work, I would like to receive 5,000 BSQ, for instance. And then their BSQ stakeholders at the end of the month, they will vote on such a compensation request. And when they agree that this compensation was valuable for the network, then this contributor has the authority to issue 5,000 BSQ. And this issuance is done as a kind of like a small Genesis transaction. The contributor himself, he creates such a Genesis transaction where he puts as an input the Satoshis, what he needed to create 5,000 BSQ. That's 5,000 multiplied by 100 is 500,000 Satoshi. That I don't know the dollar value, but it's, let's say, something like it costs him $5 to create this transaction from the Bitcoin value, but the output is something like 5,000 BSQ, which would be, for instance, equivalent to $5,000 when one BSQ is equivalent to when the market rate would be $1. So
and this means that I kind of destroy a couple of Satoshis and get in return Bisq out of that. And
you're not, you're not destroying it. You're just using some Bitcoin as a carrier for the BSQ. And of course, you cannot use this Bitcoin then for spending it for whatever, because then you would destroy the BSQ. And that's another important feature of the BSQ token. Also, the most important, and the reason why we couldn't use an existing color coin token is this decentralized issuance model. There is nobody, I'm not sitting on funds and click a button to send you as a contributor some BSQ when you would make a compensation request. You yourself you, like a miner, are in the position that you have the authority to create new tokens, and the network or the BSQ stakeholder give you the authority by voting. And the voting is also done on the blockchain, and in the Bisq application will be all these features. And with the yeah, it's a little bit kind of like instead of being a proof of work miner, you are basically a proof of labor contributor. So you need to provide real work to the project, and then the BSQ stakeholders, they are the kind of like the full nodes who are verifying your proof of work. They are verifying if your human work was really valuable, because no machine can verify if your video, when you make a video explaining Bisq for newcomers, if this video will be valid 5,000 BSQ or not. That's a subjective human decision, and only the stakeholders who are dedicated to the project and who have a stake, they are basically they are the investors of the project with their stake. They have an incentive to make this management decision, to not fund bad contribution, and not losing good contributors when they think that a developer has contributed something valuable and are not willing to pay him, then they will lose this contributor again. So they have all the incentives in place to make here good management decisions. And by this collective management decision, which is, by the way, based on meritocracy, also those stakeholders who have earned their BSQ by compensation, they have a higher weight in the voting, like the stakeholders who have bought the tokens on the market only. So when you would apply this to Bitcoin, and I'm actually not suggesting a DAO for Bitcoin, I think that's adds way too much risk and complexity to a system like Bitcoin, and there's way too much on risk on Bitcoin. But when you would apply it, like we had last year, this discussion with the blockchain block size debate and so on, and there have been quite a lot of big Bitcoin holders like Roger Ver who were very fighting strongly for bigger blocks. And in this meritocratic system, somebody like Peter Willey and Greg Maxwell would have had much higher voting power, like a Roger Ver, because they have really earned their money over contribution. They have worked on Bitcoin Core for many years, and their the tokens what they would have earned when you would make this as a parallel or as an example project, they would have had much more influence, like a Roger Ver, who have maybe millions, or for sure millions of dollar in Bitcoin, but he has not really earned it by. He has maybe made a lot of PR in the past, but not. He has never written a line of code. And,
very true, and I love this system of reputation, right? You want to be funded for and provided if you really do put out a good effort to the system. And people like Roger, yes, they do hold a lot of stake. But fundamentally, remember, we are hopefully all Satoshi millionaires, right? Million Satoshi, that's 0.01 Bitcoin, yeah. And that means that even if with a little funding, you can still become a Satoshi millionaire. That will not always be the case, but right now it still is. And what is really interesting though is that the stakeholders of the BSQ token, they do not themselves make a transaction to the contributors. So it is not a push transaction that through this mechanism moves the value from those that already hold the currency and want to further support the network to those that are actively contributing. However, it is a shift from the purchasing power to those hodlers, to those who inflate the money supply, those who contribute and get the right to inflation. So this is fundamentally a payment mechanism through inflation, and that is beautiful.
And that's the interesting. Is on the one side, you have this inflation with every compensation request, with every issuance of new tokens, we are creating more money. And when you have a bigger supply, every token has a little bit less value. So, but on the other side, there are other traders who can choose to make trading fee in BSQ, alternatively to using Bitcoin. And to incentivize them to use BSQ instead of Bitcoin, we are giving a big discount, so it will be cheaper for the trader to use BSQ. So the trader has an incentive to buy some tokens on the market. They will buy it from some contributors, so they can, when a developer need to pay their bills, they can sell some tokens, get some Bitcoin, and then maybe exchange again to $1 or euro. And the trader gets some tokens, can get a cheaper trading fee, and by the payment of the trading fee is also not, they're not paying somebody directly, like at the moment they are paying the arbitrator. There will not be such a transaction. They are burning, they are uncoloring the BSQ. They are using it at the end to give it to the miner as part of the mining fee. The miner cannot do anything with it. It's basically destroyed. And by destroying some BSQ, they are creating deflation. They are taking out BSQ of the total supply. So every small unit of BSQ will have a little bit more value. So basically, by destroying some BSQ, they are distributing this BSQ to all the stakeholders in the relation of their stake, what they have. And that's an elegant, technically and conceptually, I think, an elegant mechanism how we can enable this value transfer from the users to the stakeholders. And and the stakeholders have then the power with the voting to make the decisions who has the right to issue new tokens and create the deflationary pressure. So we have both, the inflationary pressure with issuance. So we have both the tendency of inflation, and that will be in the early days for sure higher. Like in every startup, you're spending more money, like what you're earning. But then with trading, you have the deflationary pressure, which is at the moment for sure lower, but over time, when the project becomes bigger, it can be flipping that more trading fees are burned than new tokens are created. So at the moment, we are more or less spending around 50,000 BSQ per month. That's at the moment because the DAO is not completed. It's not out in code yet. We are just practicing it on a manual base, but we are doing it already since 1 year with the voting and everything. And we are issuing roughly 50,000 BSQ, and we are, because there's no market, we are just by consensus, we define one BSQ as $1 as the value that would evaluate the project, the Bisq project, to $2.5 million, which is very conservative, I think. So.
And although this is a extremely unique and novel way of organizing and funding a venture and organization, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's something worth considering. And that is the inherent difference between inflating the money supply and that way shifting the purchasing power and giving the purchasing power through direct payments. Because if you inflate the money supply, you distort the proper ratio on the free market without inflation of the savings and the investments and the consumption after all. And so if you increase the money supply, that means that the price of the currency will tend to fall, all things being equal. And this will mean that you are incentivized a lot to consume more, to use this token more, because it is falling down in value, right? And it will continue doing so in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. I've never thought of this. Thanks for bringing this up. But I think it's for sure true, but every BSQ stakeholder can be part of this voting, and at the end, the voting process is a little bit like the central bank who make the monetary policy. They can define how much inflation they want to have, and indirectly they're also defining their rate of deflation, because when they say no, we don't spend any money and nobody get paid for anything, then we will lose users because there's no support and no bug fixes and so on. So they have to make a smart balance to get basically the best of both worlds, to get the most users with the least cost. At the end, what every company wants to do to be most efficient and to find the right balance. When they would spend $500,000 every month and only get 5 new users a month, then it's the wrong balance. When they cut the cost to
$1,000 a month, and they're losing actually users, it's also the wrong balance. So it has to be somewhere in between, and it's of course a difficult. It's a management function. A human, no machine can make this. Maybe someday AIs, but that's probably scary. At the moment, yeah, you cannot delegate, and that's actually a very important aspect of our DAO. DAOs are brought up a lot in this context of automate everything and get out the human out of their equation, because the human is not subjective and not trustless. You cannot trust him. But of course, there are problems with trust and so on, and with reliability, and we want to use cryptography and security wherever we can to avoid these problems. But humans have very big benefits as well, which is creativity, which is flexibility to make very complex decisions. You cannot write any machine who can evaluate the quality of a code from developers. That will probably also not exist in 10 years, maybe in 20 or 30 years with very developed AIs. But even then, I think there will be limits.
Exactly, and the aspect of voting is really something that changes a lot of the things that we usually think about in issuance of new money, inflating the money supply, and that is what makes it such challenging to think about these concepts. But regardless if there is being voted for, the stakeholders, they do not pay for this development 100% out of their own pocket. So for example, if we have a donation, right, if we use the Bitcoin network to send the peers here at Bisq a donation, which you can do with this address right here, right, then you give up these Satoshis. You no longer have control over them. And this means that you carry all of the costs of doing this donation, of supporting this network. However, when voting on increasing the money supply, yes, you do hodl Bisq, right? And that means that you will tend to lose purchasing power as the money supply increases. But it's not just you, it's a lot of other people as well, and all the hodlers of Bisq. And this means that you do not think as prudently about how you could fundamentally go out and spend this purchasing power as efficiently as possible, because it's not being paid only by you. So do you think that there are projects being funded with this kind of inflation scheme that would otherwise not be funded if it would be purely based on a push transaction?
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect to consider. And it's for sure a kind of like a little bit a dangerous aspect where we have to work on. And actually, we are already running in a little bit of such problems in compensation requests that maybe some people think that somebody has requested too much and and got accepted, and they don't feel okay with this. But there are mainly two aspects to consider here to keep this problem in check. One is, well, maybe three. So one is the culture. Everything is very open and transparent. So everything should be discussed. When there are such problems, people should find a consensus on a social level outside of the DAO. They just should discuss and bring up their reasons. And maybe there are sometimes unsolvable problems that some contributor wants too much money and nobody agrees, and then he's leaving. Okay, that's a valid solution as well. But yeah, and then another aspect is that the voting is based on this meritocracy. The meritocracy, so the people who have contributed most to the project over time, they have more power in the voting. It's reasonable to think that those people have first more knowledge about the project and have much more stake and reputation in the project, like somebody who comes new and makes their first request and thinks, hey, now why this guy gets so much money? That's not fair. Then he should build up his reputation, and over time, with more earned, also with his higher reputation, what he has earned by contribution, he has more influence in the voting as well. Also, there are people who have it's not only the money, it's also a lot of heart and sweat which people have put into the project. I mean, at the moment, it's only that, basically. So it's, and that's represented by this reputation. So when somebody new comes with a lot of money, why he should have more influence, like somebody who has worked since 2 or 3 years on the project and has put a lot of energy into the project. And yeah, this mix between stake and meritocracy, which is basically 2/3 are coming from the meritocratic part, I think should help to get better buyers for making better decisions. Of course, it can still be the case that those core contributors are bad managers and making bad decisions at the end. It can be. In the future, probably the DAO and this concept will evolve further in kind of like delegation systems and more sophisticated, a little bit like liquid democracy or delegated democracy, with people who are familiar for future plans and projects. But another important aspect and factor is when the current stakeholders are really bad managers, and it can be, it's a realistic risk that they are maybe great developers, but they are doing terrible as CEOs or as managers who are keeping the right balance between spending and investing in work and so on. So they are basically managing the project badly, and somebody else show up who think they can do it much better and they would do it much differently, and they are starting to fork the project and are succeeding and out-competing Bisq, and yeah, then it has moved over to another project with maybe better managers. That's a viable solution as well, and the stakeholders and this core contributors, they have to keep this always in their mind when they make a decision which could risk the chances that such a fork is successful, because they are making stupid decisions and the community tell them all the time, hey, no, don't do this, and they're going stubbornly in one direction without listening. Okay, then they're taking the risk that somebody take over the project and is successful. Like it happened a little bit with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. They made probably a big mistake with this bailout of the DAO, and then Ethereum Classic was more or less successful. Otherwise, they would not have succeeded when there wouldn't have been a really strong reason. So I think
exactly. And fundamentally, right, all these systems, regardless of what the fundamental technology is, it is a social phenomenon. There are humans working here, and you can have amazing tech and you can have amazing code. If there are shit people working on it, well, then it's a shit project, right?
And that's, I think, also the beauty of things. We are not building a unstoppable or undamageable project. When we are too stupid, we are damaging it ourselves. We are stopping it ourselves because we are not able to evolve and to learn. And that's a positive aspect at the end. And then it's the flexibility and the freedom that somebody else come up and make it better. And that's also when
anarchy, right? It is anarchy in money.
Yeah. And when the project will become super huge and inflexible and cannot move and cannot adapt anymore, then it's time, when it becomes a dinosaur, then it's time that it gets forked by many mini Bisqs, and who are more flexible, can adapt better and can be more, react better to the needs of the users. So I think it's, of course, there are risks in the project. Life is risk, otherwise you're dead. Only when you're dead, there is no risk anymore. And I think it's in the hand of all the people who are working on it. When anybody has some areas for critics, we are very open to listen for him. And when he has some good ideas for improving it, we're happy to improve it. And it's permissionless. Even if we are not, or I'm not merging it or accepting it, he can fork it and can build it on his own. It's permissionless system like Bitcoin itself.
Precisely, right? Who owns Bitcoin? Who owns Bisq? You do. And so does Alice, Bob, Charlie, and of course me, right? We all own Bitcoin. We all own Bisq because it is fundamentally a public commons, right? It is a public good because it is information. And information belongs to no one, belongs to everyone. We have in the chat, we had a great conversations with both Joe Ray and also Jake McKay, so shout out for you. And Jake, he asks a great question that goes to what we talked a bit about deflation and inflation. And he asks that, does this cause Bitcoin deflation to burn Satoshis, so to create these colored coins?
That's interesting, and that's actually something which is true also for Lightning. And actually that should increase, more projects like this should increase the value of Bitcoin, because more money is locked in Lightning channels or in Bisq DAO tokens or whatever, and they're taking out of our supply from the Bitcoin network. They are not technically destroyed. They can go back anytime, but they are taken out temporary out of supply, and that should, makes the money supply lower and should increase the Bitcoin price. So actually we are doing good for the Bitcoin holders as well.
Well, I think there is one difference between the Lightning Network and colored coins here, because Lightning Network, fundamentally, they keep the fungibility of Bitcoin, right? A UTXO on the Bitcoin blockchain is fundamentally the same monetary base unit as the current state of the UTXO locked up in a payment channel, right? It's both Bitcoin. However, with locking up the Satoshis in a colored coin, you do create kind of like a new version, a new token on top, and therefore it is no longer fungible. So I do think that I don't think that Lightning therefore increases the price of Bitcoin, but colored coins do. And so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's a good aspect. Yeah, because I mean we are basically we are taking Bitcoin as the carrier, as the vehicle where we are riding on, and when the value is creating some extra value, it should reflect back to Bitcoin as well. When all the companies on the stock markets would run as a DAO, and all the multi billions there would be represented as color coins based on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin value would need also much more security, because when somebody would attack such a color coin and would on the Bitcoin level, there would be much more incentive to hack it and to get free Apple shares. So the incentive for increasing the security of Bitcoin itself would be much higher as well. And that might be a little bit tricky and complicated, because from the game theoretical side, because they are not directly traded, or so such stocks are so represented on Bitcoin, they would not be directly directly connected with the Bitcoin value. But I think indirectly it need to increase the value of Bitcoin. Otherwise, those projects which are requiring the security of Bitcoin would run a risk, and they probably will start to do mining themselves, because they are very when Apple would be, the Apple shares would be issued on the blockchain. Probably it's reasonable for Apple to run miner and to become a big miner to secure their shares. Otherwise, when they just would delegate it to Bitmain, they run a big risk that at some point Bitmain would eat up Apple.
Oh yeah, but we never know, right? We live in crazy times, and it's so refreshing to see a project like Bisq, who is truly, it's such an innovative project. It is immense, the amount of innovation going on in this space. And Manfred, I thank you very much for dedicating the last 5 years to this project, and really building it forward. It is something that is truly needed. Having a peer-to-peer exchange that is just as important as having a peer-to-peer money system, because you somehow need to enter this peer-to-peer money system, and doing the entrance of the market peer-to-peer is exactly what we need. So thank you very much for all you've done. And maybe as a exit question, we've talked about a lot. So what are the things that you still like to mention?
Actually, to your remark here, there is another interesting way to enter Bitcoin, and that is by work, where you're exchanging your work directly to a token, and that's the DAOs. Maybe the DAOs are not only built for making an exchange possible from the effort and as a funding and management model, but the DAOs are a new form of exchange, where people are entering the Bitcoin space without touching ever if the fiat money. And I think that's another big problem in our society. There's not work for everybody anymore. So the traditional work situations is by far not satisfying to many people, and not sufficient work is there anymore for all people. And I think models like DAO, where people who create value together have a new form that they are getting into this new world of cryptocurrencies, is a new, more interesting way to exchange, like exchanging fiat.
Oh yes, we are building a completely new economy. It's not just about speculation and investing. It's about building stuff and getting contributions for doing so. That is the free market. That is beautiful. That is what Bitcoin is all about. So Manfred, we've talked about quite a bit. So maybe to finish up here, the people can find you at Manfred_Karrer on Twitter, and of course, peers, please check out Bisq.network. Again, I'm gonna put the link in the description because this is really something that I do think that that true hodlers should look into, because it is such a great technology. Go to the GitHub to check out the source code, and you can even compile it from source. Which is always more trustless than doing the download client right here. Check out the YouTube channel, Bisq, you'll find it, and it's also right here on the website with a bunch of amazing new videos coming up all the time. Oh yeah, I wanted to read a bit from Shilling Out the Origins of Money. Actually, we'll do so just then to finish off. We also talked briefly about HODL HODL, which is a not so decentralized exchange. And if you want to know more about that, Thomas and we talked to Max, the founder of HODL HODL, at the Riga Baltic Honey Matcher conference that HODL HODL was so kind enough to organize. And he is a big fan of Bisq, and I do not think that you are competing in a negative sense. I think you are competing in a positive sense. Innovating in different fields and making sure that the end user fundamentally has full power over owning and selling these Bitcoin. You can also support me in my paper on anarchy in money, part of my bachelor thesis on why we need competition in money. So of course, everything open source. If you want to contribute, it's right there. And please, guys, we talked a lot about fundraising for these open source projects, and Bisq is fundamentally one of these amazing open source projects that do absolutely deserve your attention, at least. And you can contribute in many different ways to such a project. You can go to GitHub and just fix a couple bugs. You can download the software and check it out how it works. You can tell your friends about it and introduce them. Or simply, if you just want to contribute by sending a couple Satoshis, that would be very, very much appreciated. So thank you very much for doing that. Further, if you like to contribute to our Purism fundraiser, where we will check out the amazing security-focused hard and software products of the Purism company, especially the Librem 15, then you can donate specifically to this address. And also check out the amazing Tallycoin page. And if you like it, then donate to DJ Booth, who is an amazing open source developer who's built this project, which is really nice. And this stuff needs funding. So if you would like to donate to him, he's already reached his goal for the scam clerk Bitcoin Twitter scammers blocking account. So that is cool. But to this address, you can donate to him, and he will get a couple of Satoshis so that he can continue working on this amazing website for fundraisers. So again, Manfred, it was a great pleasure to speak to you. And again, thank you so much for working on this software and for fighting the good fight for individual sovereignty and individual freedom in money and in exchanges. So that is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much for having you on the show and having this great conversation.
Well, let's hope we're going to have another conversation soon. And then maybe now to finish it up, let's now read the stuff that I actually wanted to read in the beginning. The article by Nick Szabo on Shilling Out the Origins of Money. And we'll read this passage right here. We will see that some humans, too, choose highly risky and discontinuous prey items and share the resulting surpluses with non-kin. Indeed, they accomplish this with far greater extent than the vampire bat. How they do so is the main subject of our essay. Dawkins suggests money is a formal token of delayed reciprocal altruism. Oh, that's a tough word. But then pursues this fascinating idea no further. We will. Among small human groups, public reputation can supersede retaliation by a single individual to motivate cooperation in delayed reciprocity. How do you pronounce that, Manfred?
My English is not very good, but I think it's a reciprocation, also like reciprocation, that you are, that you're getting it back.
Exactly.
In both directions.
Well,
but I'm not sure if my pronunciation is correctly.
It is really tough to pronounce. Maybe it's us Germans or German speakers who just have trouble with that word.
Yeah.
However, reputational beliefs can suffer from two major errors: errors about which person did what, and errors in appraising the value of damages caused by the act. And let's hope that the Bisq decentralized exchange, and especially the Bisq DAO, will help us in avoiding disputes and misunderstandings, with creating consensus based on fundamental cryptography and mathematics, and based upon the underlying strength of the Bitcoin blockchain and of true Nakamoto consensus. So again, we've talked a lot about the Bisq decentralized exchange, which is a fantastic software. Go check it out. Go support the network. And again, Manfred, thank you very much for joining. And see you on the next show.
Yeah. See you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.